Since some folks have already eaten and others are about to, I thought I'd just say, Lord, we bless you for providing us with this food this morning. And God, we thank you for assembling such a rich group of individuals who are faith leaders in our city. Lord, we are blessed by their presence. We are blessed by the work that they do every day. And more importantly, Lord, we are blessed by the work that they will do so that our city can continue to move forward. God bless you all. Amen. So y'all can finish eating. We'll give you a few more minutes. So let me thank you all for being here this morning. It really is an honor to have so many of you in our presence. And the reason that I thought that this was important is because you all are important. You're important to the forward movement of our city. You're important to the neighborhoods and our communities. You are the individuals that so many of our members in our communities rely on. You see the ups, you see the downs, you hear the problems, you hear the great things that people are doing in our city, and then you're called on to do so many other things. And so I wanted to make sure by providing this summit that we in the city of Baltimore are providing you with the opportunities to grow, expand, to share, and to collaborate. I can tell you that when I first became mayor, I tell folks that I didn't come to this position unprepared to lead because I had done a lot of studying. You know, I understood, for example, that 3 years prior to becoming mayor, that 545 police officers were not among the so-called 2,800 that we're supposed to have. You know, back in the days of Martin O'Malley, we had some 3,000 police officers. And for some reason, we decided that we needed 200 less. So instead of budgeting for 3,000, we began to budget for 2,800. But while that is what is in the budget, what I want you to know is that in the 3 years prior to me becoming mayor, you know, we lost 545, but since 2002, we lost almost 900 police officers. And nobody was really paying attention to the attrition rate of the police department. We had some 20 to 25, and sometimes as many as 30 police officers leaving each month. And so you all do the math. So if you're already 400 or 500 police officers down, and you're losing another 25 to 30 a month, the question should be, how do you begin to close that gap? And so our overtime budget has continued to increase. And I'd raise the response first that, do we have outliers who take advantage of that? Absolutely. But do the majority? Absolutely not. We have police officers who are working now 15-hour days, and so because we just don't have enough. So when I came in, one of the things I said was, how does someone become a police officer in the city of Baltimore? I want you to know that the applications were not even online. And so it would take almost 9 months just to get through the process of being able to get to the academy. We've been able to cut that down to 4 to 6 months because we put the applications online. So we were getting, prior to that, 50 applications a month, and now we're getting 50 to 60 applications a week. So believe it or not, there is no lack of individuals who want to be police officers in Baltimore City. I just settled with the Fraternal Order of Police their contract, a contract that had not been settled for almost 3 to 5 years, I think it was 5 years, and which the last contract gave police officers 4 days on, 3 days off. That's similar to what we do at our fire department, because our fire department sleeps at the fire department, while police officers, while they're working many long days, don't sleep at the police department. So we did get our contract back to working with them 5-2. I think there's 1 week of 5-3, but for the majority it's 5-2, 5-3. And that will allow us to have more police officers on our streets. We're also working on expanding our training capacity, because at our current facility, and you all again can do the math, the capacity is about 200 to 240 a year. So if you got that kind of void, the question should be, how do you expand? And so what we're doing is having conversations with Coppin State University, and University of Baltimore is going to be assisting us as well, to help us expand our training, because I have to be training 350 to almost 400 police officers a year. A, to keep up with the attrition rate, and B, to fill the void. And so while we've slowed down the attrition rate now to about 15 to 18 officers, and we're really proud, last month we didn't have any officers leave the police department, we believe that this is something we must do. And I say this with all sincerity that, you know, one life lost in the city is one life too many. The gun violence in the city is still out of control. We put forth legislation to require the taking of illegal guns, to make it illegal, to make it illegal to carry illegal guns on our streets. And that legislation didn't pass because I think when you think back to years prior to, when we talk about the mass incarceration of African American males, the issue around drugs and drug dealing, those laws have changed tremendously. This is not about mass incarceration of anyone. When you think about the fact that the individuals who come in contact with the criminal justice system have been in contact with the criminal justice system 9 to 11 times, leaning more towards the 11 times. That's 89% of the individuals engaged in gun violence have been in contact with the criminal justice system 9 to 11 times. When 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds and just recently 3-year-olds are becoming victims of violence, we ought to raise the question, what are we doing in our communities to stem this violence? Because it's not just about the policing the community. It is also about community engagement. It is also about the moral fabric and character of the individuals who are on our streets. It's about the communications, the job opportunities, and creating for individuals opportunities to move beyond crime. And I can tell you that, you know, one of my visions when I first became mayor was, you know, we can't wait for people to come get jobs. Let's go to the community and take them jobs. And so I created mobile units. We have 2 now, one that's run by our library system and the one that we run, that goes directly to neighborhoods and communities, not only with jobs on, we call it our jobs bus, but also with individuals on there to assist them in filling out the applications, assist them in building their resumes, assist them. We now put lawyers on those vans because there's so many people who need their records expunged. So we know that it's not a lack of jobs in the city. Some of it will require retooling. We're working with different groups and organizations just to get people, especially those who are transitioning from our penal institutions, 1 day's worked for 1 day's pay, so that we can get them used to back working. We've got a new program, ROCA, that some of you may know about, 17 to 24-year-olds who are contracting with different agencies and companies and corporations to engage those people in workforce with pay, workforce opportunities. Also, I think many of you know at this point that we've made Baltimore City Community College free. I was on a panel in Washington, D.C. as one of the cities in America that has taken the step forward to a real promise for children in education, and that is Baltimore City Community College for free. And so, when we made Baltimore City Community College free, you all, this is what happened. Coppin State University said, if you finish Baltimore City Community College for free, you can go to Coppin State University for free. I have a quarterly meeting with all of the presidents of the colleges and universities in Baltimore. This was our last meeting, and this is the kind of conversation that was had. What can we do to strengthen those students at Baltimore City Community College? What we did through our summer bridge program, we knew we have increased the enrollment at Baltimore City Community College by 70-something%. These students, for this year's enrollment. You know, and people did not think could be done, but it is working. But we also knew that there were students who were not really prepared to go to college. So what we did this summer is about 300, little close to 400 of those students, we put in our Youth Works program, but they were earning while they learned. They didn't have to go to work. They had to go to remedial classes so that they could be prepared this past fall, to enter Baltimore City Community College. 95% of those young people completed that program are now at Baltimore City Community College. I am a real believer that if you say you're going to do something, you have to look at it holistically. So in the conversations with the presidents, one of the things we said was that we made Baltimore City Community College free. Have we made the resources available for the students who are there? For example, do they all have laptop computers? And Johns Hopkins University, you should know, is now $1.9 billion donated by Bloomberg to make sure that every child who has capacity and capability to enter Johns Hopkins University can leave there without debt. You can go there for free as well. And so that you all know that this is not an impossible task, I was sitting at a round table with a group of intergenerational women from 8 to 80. And I was sitting beside a young lady, and I turned to her and I said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And pastors, faith leaders, she said, and I knew it was so long, I just said, well, that must mean doctor, something, scientist, whatever. And so I said, you know what, I need to introduce you to the dean of the medical school at University of Maryland. And she looked at me and she said, but I'm going to Johns Hopkins. I said, well, I'll have to introduce you to the dean of the medical school at Johns Hopkins. I said, but did you know that if you maintain a 4.0, that you could go for free? And all I could see was that little red button. She said, that's easy. We have that capability and capacity in our neighborhoods and in our communities. And so it is so important and imperative that we touch our young people in such a positive way that we change the trajectory of their lives, or we help them in their trajectory towards their careers in their lives. And so every day, as we continue to think about what we can do for Baltimore, it is about how we improve the lot for all of us. You know, how do we improve what we're doing? How are we collaborating? How are we making sure? For example, we also know that at Baltimore City Community College and in our schools are children who are homeless. And that conversation came up as well. Children who aren't getting enough food. So do you have a food pantry? Are you disseminating it in such a way that children don't feel embarrassed when they have to utilize those things? And so there's a conversation now, and a conversation that really needs to be had around how do we house those students who are going to Baltimore City Community College who in fact are homeless. Are there dormitory facilities, and I know of one, that are not filled to their capacity that we can provide for these young people? I know we can do this, and I assure you that we will. And so I'm excited about the work that we're doing. When I first became mayor, also there was a proposal on my desk for us to sell off our garages. Garages that would yield us some additional income to do some capital projects in the city. And being one who understands history, I remember, I was not there, but I remember reading that in 1972, Baltimore City sold off Friendship Airport, now Baltimore Washington International Marshall Airport. We sold it. We sold it for 32, I think 32 or 36 million dollars. Can you imagine if we had leased that facility, capitalized it, leased it to the state 40 years later, because it's 40 years later, what that would mean to Baltimore? And I was reading this book about the assets of a city and how we need to understand our value. And I've become the vocal leader or conversationalist, at least, at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, trying to teach other mayors to value their assets. And so we didn't sell off our garages, we leased them. We raised $80 million, we paid off the debt. We put $52 million into a neighborhood investment fund, and another $3 and $2 million separately into 2 additional funds, one to help build the capacities of community development corporations, CDCs, that have not been developed or need to be more fully developed in our neighborhoods and communities, and another $2 million for community groups and organizations. We can do this work. We can change the trajectory of our city, but it's all of us working together. So I can tell you that violence is trending downward in the city, but as I say every chance I get, that if you know someone, or you get up in the morning and you hear about a child being shot, or a cousin, or a brother, or a neighbor, or a friend, or a passerby, that doesn't mean anything. So we have to become a safer city, which is among my highest priorities, because that's how you grow a city. We brought back $1.2 billion to build new schools. Pete Hammond was with me in the General Assembly. We brought back $1.2 billion to build new schools in Baltimore. We're on target. We're on target to build more new schools in Baltimore City than the entire state of Maryland. But it's still not enough, because there's still too many schools without air conditioning and heat, and it just does not make sense, because we've not taken the time to evaluate our assets and figure out how we upgrade them so that they can keep and be the best for those who come through our doors. That's why you all are here, because you understand capacity building. You know what buildings should look like. You know how to grow institutions. What we're trying to ingratiate you in is helping us, as some of you have already done and taken advantage of, is grow community. You know, communities are not just housing. You know, it includes the church. It includes the restaurant. It includes places for our children to play. It includes places for us to entertain. And so our effort is to look beyond what people think is a neighborhood and create what people know are neighborhoods. And then to invest in neighborhoods and communities that have been underinvested in for decades. That's where this $52 million is going. Not in downtown Baltimore, we got that. It's okay. You know, not in Port Covington, we're working on that. That's okay. Park Heights, Sandtown, neighborhoods that have been underinvested in, East Baltimore, you'll see. But we need your partnership. And some of you, I said, are already working with us. So again, I wanted to say thank you all for being here. But you know, it is the collaboration that I think is most important for the future of our city. We're about to embark upon another chapter, and that is the selection of a new police chief. And I can tell you that if you know a perfect policeman, please show him to me, because I don't know any. But I do know that leadership does matter. We are under a consent decree, and we must reform this police department. It is about community engagement, and I can tell you that if you were to look at the lack of investment, you know, when I came in also, I recognized that we didn't even have computers in our police cars. They started putting those in police cars in 1997 in Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Baltimore County. I don't know why anybody didn't think it was important to put them in our cars, But that was among the first things I did, was go to the state, get $2 million, put computers in police cars in Baltimore City. You know, it's unconscionable that we don't think that we need to invest in our buildings like you invest in yours. You have to, otherwise they come crumbling down around you. And so, again, I look forward to the continued work. We have some presenters today. Laurie Feinberg, who is the acting director of the planning department, will be with you. Karen Stokes, who is CEO of Strong City Baltimore. Reverend Eric Lee, director of neighborhoods at Strong City Baltimore. Shannon Snow, project director at Episcopal Housing. Miranda Williams, director of Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition. David Bowser, vice president of Enterprise Community. Joe Williams, program director of Enterprise Community. Lisa Hodges, principal of Hodges Development, and others. But I wanted to leave you with this thought as it relates to the incoming police commissioner, is that we want him to greet you all. We want him to have conversations. We will probably have a meeting with the faith, I know we will have meetings with the faith-based community, because he's going to need you. He's going to need your support. He's going to need you to help us stem this violence in the city. And he's going to need you to help him become more familiar with the areas around your neighborhoods, around your churches, and around your community. So I'm really eager that he gets engaged with all of you all, but I'm also eager to see how we all continue to work together in our city and pushing it forward. I'd like to take a moment to also introduce our Commissioner of Housing, Michael Braverman. You're going to get a chance to speak in a minute. Let me see. I know Alice is here. Alice Kennedy is here. I was looking for Janet Abrams, but I guess she's not here. Janet Abrams heads our Housing Authority of Baltimore City, so we will have presentations as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about our community plan. I think we're going to do our little community conversation piece first. Okay. Let me also take a moment to thank my organizers. Can you all come up front for a second? I'm sure if you've not met these folks, I know you haven't met Lindsay, because Lindsay actually takes care of all of my scheduling, but at the same time is our faith-based coordinator, and she has just been a great addition to our office. And she was here long before I got here, but she does great work. And Allie Smith, I tell Allie that she owns the neighborhood and the communities. She is my community engagement person, and is all over the city in every possible way that she can be. And I think you probably go Tony without an introduction. Tony White, our neighborhoods guy, who's been around for a long time. You know, I tell people one of the things that a mayor should always do is look around and see where there's talent already there, and make sure that you don't lose people who know what they're doing but can help you get to the next level. So thank you all. I'm going to turn this back over to Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to, if we can just give a round of applause for our mayor for all the work that she's doing. We're so grateful to have a mayor that sees the importance of our churches and faith-based institutions. As you may not know, this whole summit was the mayor's vision. She wanted to bring you guys together to give information, resources, anything that we can do to help partner with you guys to continue to move our city forward. So we're so grateful for the mayor. And at this time, we're just going to have a very quick roundtable discussion between Madam Mayor and Bishop Dante Hickman of Southern Baptist Church, just to talk about some of his experience in community investment and development, some of the resources, and even some of the pitfalls that you've experienced, and how not only what you've done at Southern Baptist can be replicated not only in certain sections of the city, but throughout the city and with institutions that are here today. So I want to thank you, Bishop Hickman, for being here.
Good morning, everybody, again. I think we ought to pause and really appreciatively applaud our mayor for what she has shared with us and really for seeing the faith-based community as an asset and anchor and vital to the revitalization of our communities and our city. So I think we ought to give her a hand, really. So many times the church is seen as a spiritual entity, and we devalue the spiritual side, not realizing that the spirituality is the essence, the substratum, the noumena of anything that can be successful and sustainable. And so I'm appreciative of her. I'm really humbled and honored to be sharing in this conversation. I've been fortunate now to be the pastor of the Southern Baptist Church for 16 years, and the Lord has blessed us over these 16 years to do some extraordinary work that I did not come there to do, nor did I foresee doing. The church, when I came, was completing its first $16 million low-income housing tax credit project for seniors, a 62-unit facility that was said to them no amount of investment in this community would actually succeed. And the church, under my predecessor, Dr. Nathaniel Higgs, invested the first $1 million, risking on that particular project by faith. And when it was completed, it was not only fully leased up, but it had a rolling list of people who wanted to live in that particular facility with dilapidation still in the community. Bill Struver was the contractor of that particular project, and when he walked across the street from that project, he went into the old American brewery that was dilapidated for over 20, 30 years. And because of the success of the Cole Grant Higgs Senior Housing Development, was able to use it as a catalyst to bring an organization called Humanum to redevelop that particular building at $22 million. We've since built the Mary Harvin Senior Housing Facility, named after one of the founding members of Southern. That was the building that was set on fire after the riots of Freddie Gray's untimely death. And we were able to cut the ribbon and rebuild it a year to the anniversary of the fire. And the real miracle was that people still wanted to live in the community, and it was fully leased up on day one. And in April of this coming year, we'll break ground on 88 units of multifamily housing right across the street from it. And directly across the street from that, the old Bugle Laundry Factory we've acquired, and we'll break ground on 112,000 square feet of health and wellness center space. Now, I need to go back and
I was gonna say, the question is though, so how did you get to do that?
That's exactly where I'm going.
Because you're a church in the community,
Yes.
so what makes you qualified, or what resources did you have to be able to do this?
It was totally by faith in God. I had no imagination of doing this kind of work. When I came to the church, my vision was to do soup kitchens and food pantries and clothing drives. And someone asked me, "What's the vision, Pastor? We just built this. What are we going to do in the community?" And I sat there saying, "I don't know." And I looked off one day, literally, while sitting outside of the church at a block of homes that had been abandoned for 10 years, 15 years before I arrived. They've been abandoned still for 30 years. And I asked the question, how did they get this way? And if we were to renovate them and rebuild them, what is to prevent them from becoming that way again? And the mantra came immediately that we have to restore people as we rebuild properties. That it's not enough to invest in the physical capital, but we have to invest in the human capital as well. And we began to get task forces set up in our church to do a demographic analysis of our community to find out what were the real needs and where were the felt needs of the community, so that in our development of vision, we would be able to address qualifying people who live there for the quality neighborhood that we were trying to develop. And we noted all types of issues that are prevalent in all of our communities. How do we address early childhood education? How do we address the HIV and AIDS epidemic that infects and affects our family and friends? How do we address financial services and behavioral health and mental health? And everybody in the church said, Pastor, where you gonna put all this stuff? And I said, we own a house across the street. We'll renovate it and we'll put it all in that house. And we're gonna call that the Mary Harvin Transformation Center. Well, fortuitously for us, that one stable block in the community of senior citizens formed a community association. And they said, not in our block. They said, we don't want that in our block. We don't want people like that living next to us. And to me, I'm saying, surprise, it's all around you. And what I needed, Madam Mayor, was to change the residential zoning to commercial. So I thought that would be easy. I went downtown and by myself, and there were 30 senior citizens up against Pastor Dante Hickman on their canes talking about, we don't want it in our block. And guess what? They won. I went to their community association meeting that night and I said, y'all kicked my butt. You taught me a lesson. And they said, oh, Rem, don't take it so hard. We want what you have to offer, just not in that location. They said, go up the street where you own commercial property, knock that mess down. And while you at it, get the city to knock down that block of Federal Street that has been an eyesore to our view for years, and then build your center. I said, wow. So now the idea has evolved from a small house to an 8,000 square foot facility. And then when we looked across the street, we said, we built one senior center, let's do it again and add these services to it. So that the vision evolved out of conflict and engagement. And I'll never forget, we needed to buy a $10,000 property that we didn't own. And I went to the church on that Sunday and I asked them to give the $10,000 based on vision and faith. And they gave the $10,000. We were able to purchase the property. I met with the city and said, can you demolish this property? And the city said, it's going to cost this much, this much. We didn't have a dollar, but we learned how to navigate and negotiate the process in faith to demolish property toward a vision that we would create. And it was successful. And I need to say this, that during that time, we learned that Johns Hopkins and the East Baltimore Development Initiative was creating a master plan south of where we were. And we looked at their master plan and we noted that they created boundaries in the wrong place. They stopped their development activity at a railroad track, and an elevated railroad track at that. And when we looked at the map, we said, what about the people on the other side of the track? And what was said to us by city officials back then was that there is no master plan for that area, and there's not one forthcoming. And to the people at the institution, they saw it as a boundary when people who lived in the community saw it as up the street and down the street. So we said the real boundary is Clifton Park, the second largest park in the city. And this is where collaboration and partnership came in. We came together, 7 churches, namely Greater Gethsemane, Pastor Reggie Thomas, Israel Baptist Church, Pastor Harley Wilson, Tony Draper at St. John, Carl Solomon at United, James Carter at Ark Baptist Church. And we all came together and said, we need to address the area that the city and Johns Hopkins is not addressing. And we sat down in a room, took a map, literal crayons, and drew out our footprints of influence in the areas that were not being addressed. And we made a covenant, watch this, not to compete. We said, if you're building a school, I don't need to build a school. We can partner together and build that school. And we said that we're going to develop simultaneously. And we took our partnership to the municipalities and the elected officials. And we said, we are the East Baltimore Ministers Community Development Partnership. And any development that's coming in our community, we want to know about it. Not to be adversarial, but to maximize the effort. And at that time, we decided in each of our footprints that we were going to aggressively acquire and assemble property. We met with a developer, and that developer said to us, you got to build from strength to strength. Starting at your church, can you build 75 to 100 houses? Because that would demonstrate strength in each of your footprints. And that's what we started to do. And that collaboration became the narrative for how we were able to get our master plan, led by the churches, approved and adopted by the city this past September.
So, as we conclude this segment, if there was advice that you could give, focus that you would want folks in this room to have, what would that be?
That you have to do some major capacity building. And I just came out of revival, so I'm losing my voice bad. But you have to do some capacity building if you don't have a community development corporation. That is your first step to develop an arm's length organization apart from your church that can take on this activity. I would say that you need to hire a development consultant and have a development team, because we don't naturally, as pastors, do this kind of work. And I've had to learn all kinds of stuff that I never wanted to learn, and things that I never thought that I would be engaged in, but it has been so fulfilling for me to be a part of this work. And I would say to us that we have to be flexible and fluid in our ideas and our visions, and never think, oh, this is a vision from God and it's got to be that way. The devil is a lie and you lying too. You have to be able to shift and engage the community and other anchors and other entities, because you're not the only one that has an idea or who has a vision. And your vision has to be expansive enough to include everybody. I'll never forget, I wrote an opinion editorial in the paper. One elected official was toasting it up at the Preakness after the riots were over and said Baltimore's moving forward and everything is behind us. And I wrote an editorial named after a book, Adventures in Missing the Point. Because if we don't redress the real issues in our community, we'll see that event happen over and over again. And so we have to be very intentional as the faith community to know that our voice and our vision is vital to the revitalization of our city. This city and no city will be successful in sustainable development without the faith-based community at the table and leading in that particular vision. And I'll say this lastly, that you have to be willing to commit to the process, because development is not for the faint of heart. It's a long process. I sat at the table 16 years ago talking to Arna Williams, our accountant, advisor, and member, and our task forces. And Arnold said, "Pastor, how long do you think this will take?" I was so green and naive. I said, "Oh, we'll complete it in about a year and a half." Here we are 15 years later and finally having some success. Any project you take on to build will take at least 3 years to see it through. At least 3 years. So don't be under any disillusionment that you're going to be able to get it done overnight. It takes time. And I'll say lastly, don't ever think that you can't afford to do it. What we've been able to do is not because Southern Baptist is a rich church. That's a lie. For many years, we were building with a zero balance. But we were able to put skin in the game. And you gotta believe that if you got 2 fish and 5 barley loaves of bread, if you're willing to put that toward a vision that is God-inspired and has the community at heart, then you will be surprised to see the provision that will come toward what God wants to do in your community.
Let's give the bishop a big round of applause. I want to thank you for sharing. I hope that you all found this valuable. I know that some of you are already walking in these footsteps, and some of you are running in these footsteps. So again, thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to the team.
I want to say that I can't get every vacant building in the city done without your help. So hopefully everybody here is going to leave with additional capacity and resources.
You can play a huge role in the stabilization of the communities around your faith institutions and houses of worship.
So I want to bring Janet Abrams up with me because I heard that she was introduced. But for those of you who don't know, when I became mayor, one of the things I said I was going to, well, a couple of things I said I was going to do, but one of the things that I said I was going to do was split housing and community development from the Housing Authority of Baltimore. And that was a really important thing to me because as I looked around cities across the country, the Housing Authority side was separated from the community development side. And not that the Housing Authority side doesn't deal with community development, but it deals with public housing and public financing that comes through HUD. And so I searched around the country for someone I thought who really gets it, who came in. Janet Abrams, come on up. Janet came here. We were in the midst of looking at promised neighborhoods. And I think you were only about a month or so in, and was able to bring back $35 million from HUD. We are one of the 6 promised neighborhoods in the country. That $35 million will attract over $800 million in investment in that part of the city. And I thought she might want to share just some of the things that she's dealing with and doing in public housing, and some of the things I think impact your neighborhoods and communities as well. Janet Abrams.
Hello, everyone. Of course, I don't have anything planned. My mayor always put me out there, and I appreciate that because she's my biggest cheerleader, so I want to thank her. So one of the things that we're doing right now with the Housing Authority, with the grant that we received from HUD for the Choice neighborhood, one of the things that we're doing, we will be demolishing Perkins Homes. That footprint, so the Choice Grant, the beauty of the Choice Grant is that it is different from the Hope 6 grant. This grant focused on neighborhood, not just the housing side. It focused on neighborhoods, it focused on people. It has a strong component for us to work with our families and the community at large. And it also focused on housing. So one of the things that we had to do was to establish a footprint for the Choice Grant. And so we did. It's Monument to the east, I think it is. Is that east? All right, so I'm getting it. And then, of course, you had Broadway, Central, and Old Town. So we have a humongous footprint that we will be focusing on. And as the mayor said, we're leveraging with these dollars that we receive over $800 million worth of investment. That includes the faith-based community. They have been strong partners in this initiative. They were part of the planning process. This was a planning process that incorporated not just the residents, but also faith-based communities, the local businesses, the philanthropic communities, and also at the end of the day, the city and the Housing Authority became strong partners in this initiative. We were also granted a $1.3 million grant to create a transformation plan for Paul Homes. Paul Homes is located in the Poppleton Hollins Market area. So we're currently working, we have 51 partners that we're working with in that area. And again, that includes faith-based organizations to help us to transform Paul Homes, because as you know, in that particular area, you have La Cité, you have Southwest Partnership, who adopted 7 neighborhoods and is in the process of redeveloping those neighborhoods. You have the university with the biopark. So there are a lot of investments that's in that community, and we want our residents to take part into that. One of the main focus of these grants is that at the end of the day, we are bringing back every single unit that we are demolishing. So that's the beauty of it. So all our residents will have the opportunity to stay in the community in which they are currently residing in. And last but not least, we're doing a strategic plan. Through the strategic plan, we will be reaching out to the faith-based organizations, because we have some of our scatter sites portfolio that we're making some decisions on, which is located in communities where your churches are. So we will be talking at length about those things, but I just want you all, if you're interested, the Housing Authority just let an RFQ to talk to major developers and small developers in the area so we can talk about transforming our public housing properties. Thank you. I'm sorry. Gilmore Homes. So one of the things that we're doing with Gilmore Homes, which is a property that we know we have to do a lot in Sandtown. Right now, we don't have a full plan, but one of the things that we're doing, we're de-densifying Gilmore Homes. We just received approval from HUD to demolish 6 of the buildings that's located in the center of Gilmore Homes. So you will see, for those of you in Sandtown, you will start seeing activities at that property in January. We will, of course, start some planning process for that particular area, and of course, O'Donnell Heights. That is another area that we're also working through, trying to redevelop and make sure we have a transformation plan also for that area. Thank you.
And finally, I hope that you all got something out of this today. And as Tony said, please fill out the survey because it helps us as we plan moving forward. And I will be counting on you when we do our invitation for our faith-based individuals to community to greet and have conversations with our new police commissioner. So again, thank you all and bless you for participating.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.